Allen Lund Company wishes all the owner-operators out there a Happy New Year. OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
Daimler has resumed sales of diesel trucks in Oregon, but the State Trucking Association's Jana Jarvis says the Advanced Clean Trucks rule is still poised to wreak havoc on the trucking industry there. Scott Thompson reports on that and more. Some company drivers who use that company's truck with everything else determined by the carrier, but don't receive a W-2 like an employee, they get a 1099. I'll talk with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Tyson Fisher and Mark Schremer of Landline Magazine join us to analyze the biggest stories of the week, including California backtracking on its Advanced Clean Fleets rule. And finally, Marty Ellis is hearing about some things bothering truckers right now, and high on the list is the clean truck check in California. I'll talk with the man who drives the spirit of the American trucker. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. A coalition led by OOIDA has formally called on President-elect Trump to rescind FMCSA's speed limiter mandate proposal upon taking office. The coalition includes 17 associations representing the agricultural, construction, and trucking industry stakeholders, among others. In a letter to the incoming president, the coalition said FMCSA's proposal for a speed limiter mandate would be bad for road safety, driver retention, and supply chain performance. They formally asked President-elect Trump to remove and ultimately rescind the notice of proposed rulemaking, noting that would be an ideal place to start as the president considers deregulatory action. FMCSA's most recent update on the speed limiter proposal came last month. It remains on the agency's agenda currently slated for release in May, although there is virtually no chance that happens during the Trump administration. New details tonight about the confusion in Oregon regarding the state's Advanced Clean Trucks rule. After announcing it would be pausing all sales of internal combustion engine trucks in Oregon, Daimler Trucks North America reversed course and said it was resuming sales of diesel trucks there. While welcome news for the trucking industry, Oregon Trucking Association President Jana Jarvis told Landline that Advanced Clean Trucks requirements will still wreak havoc on the trucking industry.
Well, I try to keep my members pretty well informed, so it didn't hit them as a big surprise when Daimler issued that announcement, because I'd been warning them for the last couple of years that was coming. That it was going to affect their ability to purchase new diesel trucks. I didn't have any idea what the ratios were going to look like or any of that, but certainly the policy in and of itself has a huge impact on the market. And so I have not heard from too many of our members. However, I have heard from a number of trucking companies that are not our members that are going, why can't I buy a new truck? So yes, there has been some of that. And particularly companies that don't consider themselves in the trucking space. Perhaps they're in construction or another industry that they have a lot of trucks and they're not trucking first. They have a trucking division. They're discovering this now, and there's starting to be a lot of pushback and concern over that.
Oregon is one of 5 states this year to implement a version of California's Advanced Clean Trucks rules. In those states, such as Oregon, zero-emission trucks must make up at least 7% of all sales of model year 2025 Class 8 trucks. The rule applies only to manufacturers, not dealerships. Oregon officials pointed out to Landline that Advanced Clean Trucks does not ban the sale of new conventional diesel trucks, nor does it require dealers or businesses to purchase zero-emission trucks. While true on paper, the effects of the new rules are being passed down to dealers and businesses buying trucks. To meet that 7% zero-emission sales target, manufacturers are requiring dealers to sell 1 electric truck before they can sell 13 diesel trucks. However, Jarvis said there is virtually zero demand for zero-emission trucks right now, effectively making that 1 to 13 sales ratio the same as a complete pause on diesel truck sales.
So the bottom line is Daimler can sell a handful of diesel trucks. Volvo can sell a handful of diesel trucks, and so can PACCAR. Certainly not anywhere near where the demand is for a new product.
And even for those who may be interested in buying an electric truck, Jarvis said there's a pretty big obstacle in their way as well.
I will tell you that we have 1 public charging station in Oregon, in Portland, on Swan Island. It is Daimler's facility. It's a 5 megawatt facility, and it has 3 portals so that you can charge 3 trucks at a time. 5 megawatts, 3 trucks. There are about a significant portion of the time, only about half of that capacity or less is available because those wires are constantly getting stripped for the copper, and so they're non-functioning a great percentage of the time. So there isn't much in the way of public charging.
Charging issues aside, Jarvis also points to mileage range as a big issue.
The fact of the matter is that battery electric trucks, particularly in the Class 8 space, just don't work for the vast majority of trucking companies or companies that purchase those trucks in Oregon today. We have very little limited mileage routes, shall we say. And so with terrain, because we have a lot of mountains here, and with weather, battery electric, the range anxiety is a very real thing.
There is some interest in the state capitol to give truckers some relief from advanced clean trucks. Last November, State Rep Shelley Beauchart Davis sent a letter to the Oregon Environmental Quality Commission urging it to delay implementation of the new rules. Although that delay hasn't happened, Jarvis hopes the conversation gets picked back up when the state legislature begins its next session on January 21st. We'll keep you posted. And finally, you don't have much more time to file comments about FMCSA's broker transparency proposal. In November, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration introduced a proposal that would improve transparency in the broker-carrier model. Some of the provisions include requiring brokers to keep their records in an electronic format and providing those records within 48 hours of a carrier asking for them. It is not a perfect proposal. FMCSA doesn't mention how it'll improve enforcement and penalize bad actors, but OOIDA calls it a step in the right direction toward holding brokers accountable. The association has called on its roughly 150,000 members to submit comments detailing their experiences with brokers and their thoughts about the proposal. OOIDA President Todd Spencer echoed that plea here on Landline Now.
And obviously, we also want to encourage truckers to engage on the issue, to communicate, to share their thoughts with FMCSA. And, with our fightingfortruckers.com website, we make it really, really, really easy to have access to all of the relevant information and to communicate directly with FMCSA. Now, we don't have, in essence, a sample letter per se, simply because we want truckers to say how this issue affects them. And in their own words, that is most compelling. Comments don't have to be long. They don't have to be in-depth. They can be specific. The more specific, the better. The issues that you encounter in instances where you ask for this transparency. What happens? What do the brokers do? What are the threats that they make? Let's talk about the real issues that affect real truckers every day. That's how we resolve some of these things.
The deadline to file comments is Tuesday, January 21st, as Spencer mentioned there. The easiest way to submit yours is through the fightingfortruckers.com website. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. OOIDA is seeking the names and addresses of military personnel serving overseas so we can send them care packages through Truckers for Troops. Call that information in to Nikki Johnson at our main number, 816-229-5791, or email it to troops@ooida.com. Starting Saturday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the TA in Barstow, California. That's located at exit 178 on Interstate 15. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss when employee drivers get a 1099 instead of a W-2 with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department, and we'll report on the end of California's Advanced Clean Fleets Rule. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At TruckStop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on TruckStop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Over the past few years, we've been hearing about a trend. The information comes from drivers, many of whom talk about it when they visit OOIDA's tour truck. Those drivers say they're driving for a company, using that company's truck. They do not own nor ever will own the truck or any of the associated equipment. Their loads, routes, pickup, and delivery times are all given to them by the carrier that hired them. And yet, when they get their tax documents at the end of the year of working, they don't receive a W-2 like an employee. They get a 1099. So why is that a concern? To get an idea of what's going on and what it means to drivers involved, I'm joined now by Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. Guys, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Mark.
Thanks as always, Mark. Glad to be here.
Can we kind of start just talking about the 1099 document? Who's going to get one of those, and what essentially is that for?
Well, typically, owner-operators or
independent contractors would get a 1099 from a carrier and or a broker, anybody that they do business with, and it will basically just say this is the income that was paid to you from our business over this period of time. And out of that, the independent contractor or owner-operator, whatever the situation is, they would deduct, when they do their taxes, they would deduct their operating expenses from that amount and pay taxes on the proper amount after that's done. Is what happens here is you have a misclassification of employment. And I know there's been a lot of information out there. There's been different rules and regulations that have come up about this, and with each administration, that also seems to change a little bit based on what the administration decides. Yeah, I mean, a good rule of thumb that I always consider is if you own the equipment that you're bringing on and leasing onto the carrier, it's a pretty good chance you're a 1099. If that carrier is providing said equipment, you should probably be an employee driver on a W-2, meaning that taxes are different. So if you're an owner-operator, that means you have to take out taxes throughout the year to be able to pay at the end of the year. And as far as being an employee driver, you are allowed benefits and certain insurance, so they pay into your Social Security, things of that nature.
That's kind of what the carriers are getting out of this, isn't it? I mean, basically, I don't have to withhold taxes. I don't have to pay my share as a company of Social Security payments or FICA tax. I don't have to pay benefits. I don't have to pay workers' comp. I'm just going to shift that all onto the worker.
Yeah, and then the problem becomes when that worker files their taxes at the end of the year, they have not looked for that and saved that money back to pay those taxes, and they end up with a big tax debt that they didn't know was coming their way. They just thought through the year, hey, this was all right, until it's tax time. Everybody thinks it's good until it's time to pay Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
And the biggest thing I see is I got guys calling in here that have been doing it 20 or 30 years that way, and they've just made it to where it's okay. They've convinced themselves that they're okay, and they may be 50, 60, 70 years old, and what I don't understand is they're not thinking about retirement or the future. They haven't paid anything into taxes or Social Security for all this time when they could have.
And this is something that owner-operators deal with as well, because they are paid on a 1099 and they pay their own taxes and stuff. If you're not a company driver and you don't pay into Social Security, Medicaid, unemployment, and all this kind of stuff, those are benefits that you can't later draw on.
Yeah, and you don't have an IRA or a 401k as an owner-operator unless you go set one up yourself, right? So you have to set yourself up for that. And being misclassified, these newer guys don't understand that tax bill hits at the end of the year, especially if you haven't been saving a certain percentage out of your pay. And a good percentage, I would say, is usually 15 to 25% save out for taxes.
Well, and of course, I mean, talking about that, one of the things that I think is a real kind of a catch in here that can really get someone is the FICA or Social Security tax, because if you're with an employer, I think it's 7%, they pay 7% of your salary, you pay 7% of your salary. But if you are self-employed, you're supposed to pay the whole load. Mm-hmm. And then you've got income taxes on top of that, plus state income taxes. And, in addition, as you mentioned, Tom, if you don't pay into social, you don't get.
Yep.
On top of that, they can go back 7 years for the money that you haven't paid.
Yes, they can. And this is money not only that you should have paid, but if you are a company driver and you are being misclassified under this situation, you're losing out a lot. I mean, the company should be paying in, their share of everything that goes in there. So, as you mentioned earlier, it's a benefit for the carrier or for the company, not so much for the driver. I mean, they think it is at the time because they're getting a little bit more money in their pocket at the time, but it's just that they're shorting the taxes that should have been paid. And also then you don't have protections. We get calls from folks that are, by all means, it would be a company driver paid on a 1099 instead, misclassified employment. And we get calls from them saying, hey, the carrier didn't pay me. What do I do? Well, you don't have some of those employee connections or resources if you're paid on a 1099. Call the Department of Wages and Labor. I give that number out quite a bit. And if you're paid on a 1099, they'll say, oh, well, you're a contractor. We can't help you.
Yeah, a lot of times for any kind of document like that, a contract, a lease agreement, you're going to end up in court if you have a discrepancy, a breach of contract, something like that, a payment issue. You're not allowed any of those protections about, getting paid from the Department of Labor or anything like that. It's not that they don't care. It's just that that's outside of the scope of what they do because you have a contract issue, not an employment issue at that point.
And that's something that you keep in mind. As a contractor, you operate under a contract. As an employee, you operate under employment agreement. And your employment agreement is usually not a contractual obligation. It's a at will.
Yeah, and it's governed by each state.
Yep.
So you need to check your state's rules and regulations in regards to that because it could be vastly different.
Yeah, and the Department of Wages and Labor has a line that you can call in if you have issues with a carrier and you are an employee. And you can call in and you can get them involved in it. But when you call in, and as soon as you tell them you are a 1099 contractor, it's not a direction for them to go. So as Aaron said, you're going to end up in court if you want to pursue that payment.
And you know what's worse, Mark, is when you're really an employee, but you're moonlighting as a 1099 owner-operator, thinking that you're getting paid all this money up front, and you have no contract. And then when things go sideways, you have no employee protections, and you don't have the contract you were supposed to have either.
Yeah, because there should be something in there. I know that's a little bit naive, but there should be something in that contract to protect both sides.
That's the worst I see, though.
Yeah,
you don't have either one.
It is, and a lot of people, they get into this thinking, well, there would be a contract forthcoming. But some of these carriers are not quite above board, and they've been doing this a long time, and they know how to get around and get over on you.
Well, like I said earlier, they're saving 15 to 25% doing this. You're getting paid more on the front end, you think, and all the while you're not taking out the taxes, which you have to pay on the back end, and you're not getting any benefits paid in for your retirement either. So you're really not coming ahead. You're just more short-sighted than anything. You're not planning for the future.
I would agree.
Absolutely. I'm curious, guys, you've mentioned a couple of times that you get a lot of phone calls about this. How often is this happening? Is there a pattern in terms of where it's happening, what kinds of carriers or operations are doing this?
Yeah, I would say, a lot of the calls that we get come from the Illinois area.
Yeah, same with lease purchases.
Yeah.
All Illinois, Chicago area. I would say more than half. It's hard to put a number on it. I don't have the percentages. I don't have any algorithm I've done, but it's more than half the phone calls are from the Chicago area.
Yeah. When we get a call from somebody and they said, I was running for this carrier out of Chicago, I cringe just a little bit because it's not good up there, the stuff that's happening. And I've spoke to many people from that area, and if there's somebody calling me saying I'm getting ready to go to that area to a carrier, I tell them straight up front, man, think that one over because we hear a lot of bad stuff coming out of there.
Yeah, and I think Illinois does have at the state level a wage payment bureau that if you're an employee, that if someone does not pay you your wages, they're supposed to help you go get them. But I've also talked with people here in the building who have made calls to them and are like, oh, we don't do trucking. That's not the law, but you're running into another barrier there. And I think it's just because of the overwhelming amount of problems in trucking with this kind of thing.
I agree. And, that's one of the things in trucking in the transportation industry. There are situations where just because it's been done a certain way for a long time, people think, well, that's the right way to do it. No. Just because you've done something one way for 20 years doesn't make it the correct way to do it.
Yeah, and let me reintroduce this. I've talked to guys 20, 30, 40 years sometimes that have been doing it that way and have been misclassified for 20, 30, 40 years. It doesn't necessarily mean you've been doing it right. And don't take my and Tom's word for it or yours, Mark. Go down to the IRS and fill out, what's that form?
The SS8 form.
And find out for yourself.
Yeah, that's a form that you can fill out. You can get this offline. Just put in SS as in Social Security and the number 8. And it's a form. You can fill it out, send it into the IRS, and they will make a determination on whether you are an employee or a contractor.
That's interesting because, boy, you get the IRS involved, it's a whole new ballgame.
It is. It is, absolutely.
Okay, and folks, we will find a link where you can get right to that form online and put it on our website, landlinenow.com. Again, that's at landlinenow.com. If you're in this situation, if you're working for one of these 1099 carriers, how do you protect yourself? What is your best course of action to either fix this situation where you are, which I don't know, it doesn't sound likely, or to extricate yourself from it?
Well, I would say that probably your second option would be the better one, to get out of this situation. I mean, if you're in a situation and it's not good, and you've already been there, it's not good, it's not going to get better by itself. So if you're in that situation, it's beyond me as to why somebody would want to be a 1099 contractor compared to an employee. Because in an employee, you have benefits, company benefits, possibly health insurance. Other benefits that come with being an employee. Not all jobs have these, but a lot of them do. And, you're just missing out on so much of what you could have. So I would say, look at your situation. And if it doesn't feel right, you don't get compensated correctly, you're not getting settlement sheets, they don't take taxes, Social Security, Medicaid, unemployment out of your check as they should and turn it into the state, you probably need to step back and look at your situation and say, I think I could do better for myself.
Well, and be mindful, use common sense, do your research, do your homework. The best, way to get out of the contract or out of the misclassification is to never start or allow yourself to get put in that situation in the first place, right? But nobody ever wants to say that out loud, but I will, right? I mean, that's the real, if we as drivers keep allowing this, it will continue to run rampant in this industry. And that's one of the biggest problems in this industry is that we as drivers allow this to happen because we're on board with it.
Yeah.
And these carriers have an incentive to do this. This is helping them. It's not helping
It saves them money.
Financial incentive, yeah.
Okay.
What's more motivating than money?
Okay. Well, guys, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for all the information, and hopefully we save someone some trouble here.
Let's hope so.
Okie doke. Thank you very much.
Thanks as always, Mark.
I've been talking with Tom Crowley and Aaron Lynch of OOIDA's Compliance Department. And again, folks, that's IRS Form SS8. We'll have a link on our website. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit CapitalReman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Landline Now, welcome back. It's been a very busy week in trucking news, so let's not waste any time getting to our two distinguished guests today for a rundown. You know him. I was going to say, you know him, you love him. Tyson Visscher, Mark Schrimmer of Landline Magazine. Welcome to the show. You are one of the distinguished gentlemen, Mark Schrimmer. Good to see both of you.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
I want to start by looking at what happened in California this week because it's a big deal, and we may not be able to overstate just how big a deal this is. Tyson, we talked earlier this week about the mess involving the Advanced Clean Trucks rule in Oregon, and then just a few days later, we had California pulling the plug on its Advanced Clean Fleets rule there. Really a big win for trucking industry stakeholders, Tyson, worried about their business model, and it's been basically upended here.
Yeah, this is great news. Real quick, an overview of what Advanced Clean Fleets is. That would be basically an electric truck mandate for larger fleets and drayage operations. Larger fleets is any fleet with 50 or more trucks or annual revenues of more than $50 million. Basically, if you had like a truck of 60 fleets and you wanted to replace 5 of those trucks, those 5 trucks would have to be electric trucks or zero emission trucks. Getting rid of the diesel trucks. That was supposed to go into effect last year, but the only problem was that CARB did not have the necessary waiver from the EPA. So we've been waiting on that all year, but then CARB said, well, we will enforce this retroactively. So you can buy a diesel truck, but if you do, when or if we get this waiver, we're going to take it away from you. Basically, we're going to have. So you had that looming all year round. So fast forward to December, and the EPA starts handing out waivers to California, including for advanced clean cars too, and the heavy-duty omnibus regulation. Noticeably missing was advanced clean fleets. So there's only 1 month left for the Biden administration EPA, and we all know the Trump EPA, no way they're giving away that advanced clean fleets waiver. So the question is, what's going to happen? Well, now we know. Basically, California waved the white flag and said, well, I mean, there's no way this is going to happen within the next 4 years. We're just going to, pull the plug. So advanced clean fleets is dead. It's effectively no more.
For now. I mean, who knows what happens in 4 years, I suppose.
Sure.
But for now, this is, the issue's dead in California, which, as we have talked about before, what happens in California often ends up happening in other states like Oregon, which we talked about earlier in the week. So this really is a big domino to fall. We're going to see a lot of these other things kind of fall by the wayside as well, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that's the question is, like, where do we go from here? There are several federal lawsuits for advanced clean trucks, for example. There's 5 states implemented that this year, with another 5 states planning on implementing advanced clean trucks in next year and the year after. So more challenges to other emission regulations in California. But it's also worth noting that this kind of does complicate advanced clean trucks in California, because advanced clean fleets was seen as complementary to that. So, advanced clean trucks requires manufacturers to sell a certain percentage of their sales have to be zero emission vehicles, right? Well, the idea was, if these larger fleets are forced to buy zero emission trucks through advanced clean fleets, it kind of helps the advanced clean truck sales.
Yeah.
And so now you kind of eliminate. So it kind of complicates things. Again, this is still a good thing that advanced clean fleets is not going to be around, but it does complicate the larger picture of the suite of truck emission regulations in California.
Can I start a petition to have a different name for each of these? Because it gets super confusing when we've got advanced clean trucks and advanced clean fleets and who knows what else out there. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the States. Again, with a new administration coming in, there's going to be less willingness to kind of push those things along. So we'll see how that goes in the coming months and coming years. I want to turn now to another thorny issue here. This is connected vehicles. We've talked about the security risks that are associated with them quite a few times here on the show. And the Commerce Department this week really fast-tracked a rule that would add some protections, but, and we're going to get to this in a moment here, Mark, but it's far from perfect. But just to begin with, what exactly, and it's pretty simple, what exactly is this rule going to do?
Yeah, so basically connected vehicles, the different components, because I guess I'll back up for a second.
Yeah.
When you think about, vehicles and cars, they're not your dad's Oldsmobile, anymore. They basically are mobile computers, and it's what they are. And so some of the components, hardware and software on these vehicles are being created in China, Russia, and there's obviously concerns about that, cybersecurity concerns, national threat concerns, and risks. So that's basically what this is looking at. It is, putting a ban on those specific components from foreign adversaries is basically the way to look at it. As you mentioned, and kind of alluded to, the bad part of it is the proposal had originally included trucks in it. And now when we see the final rule, because it was so fast-tracked, I think, because the comment period ended at the end of October, and for government to already have a final rule in mid-January, it's a huge quick turnaround for government. We complain all the time about how slow the wheels move in government, and this was quick. But the downside of that is I think they realize, as we often say, trucks are different than cars. You need to make those considerations. So they couldn't get to trucks. So they're planning on doing a separate proposal, separate rulemaking on trucks at a later date is what they said. But what also is really kind of concerning throughout that, they still mention that trucks cause grave risk and danger, of these connected vehicles. Because if you're talking about terrorist threats or possibilities of that type of national security risks, obviously trucks
can do a lot of damage.
Yeah. And the fact that they're waiting on that is concerning, and OIDA has said as much.
Yeah, I guess that's a question I have, and everything you said there makes sense, and I think the Commerce Department's stance on this also makes sense, but it begs the question, and you kind of raised it there, what does this mean for the commercial trucking industry when we're talking about connected vehicles? If it is so complicated, as you pointed out there, and the risk is, much higher, what does that look like? And we don't know the answer to that necessarily, but it's a big question that really does need to be answered. My fear is that, does it get pushed to the wayside here amid all the, transition period kind of stuff? Or
you don't know. If you remember back last time the Trump administration came in, it came in with that kind of rule of to bring in any new regulation, two need to go out, that type of thing. And also, which is common to put kind of a stop, maybe like a 60-day stop on anything that's coming through, or kind of a pause, which again, all makes sense with new people coming in. But yeah, if this is such a grave threat, is using the words that they have, this isn't something that I think you should be waiting on. And you would think that maybe these in reverse, that maybe they tackle the truck side of it first. I mean, Tyson did a story last year about how basically some professors at a college were able to do a study and hack into ELDs.
Colorado State University, and we talked with them as well.
Yeah, take advantage of the accelerator, and that stuff is scary. And you talk about hazmat loads and all different things. It's really scary, and hopefully something will be done about it soon.
We'll keep an eye on that. Another big story I want to turn to here was a federal court throwing out a trucking company's lawsuit that was challenging the Labor Department's new independent contractor rule. Tyson, you've been covering this story, another complicated one because we've got a ton of lawsuits out there, and this issue obviously is a big one. We should probably start with some background. Tell us exactly what this lawsuit was about and how it, played out here over time.
So the lawsuit challenged the new independent contractor rules at the federal level. So finalized last January 2024, the independent contractor standards, who would be considered independent contractor. It replaced Donald Trump his first administration's 2021 independent rules. Basically, it's kind of hard to get into the details details, but just fairly quickly, it is more ambiguous. There's a lot more leeway with the definitions, whereas the 2021 rules were a little bit more concrete. So proponents of the new rule says that it will solve the widespread issues of misclassification that we see at the ports all the time with port truck drivers. But opponents of the new rule say that this more ambiguous 6-factor economic reality test will force employers to reclassify actual bona fide independent contractors as employees. That was the argument of Colt and Joe Trucking in their lawsuit, which basically said, because of these new standards, I have independent contractors. I don't know whether or not through this ambiguous standards, whether or not they're independent contractors. So they're just leaving. I don't, we have no recourse. I can't hire drivers because I don't know how this new rule is going to be applied. This is unconstitutional. That was their argument. But what the federal court ruled was just like, well, your harm, which is, that this rule might deem these drivers as, independent contractors or employees. This is all speculation.
Right.
There has been no actual enforcement from the Department of Labor saying that these independent contractors are employees. Therefore, you have no standing. That's kind of what happened with that. And so so the federal court dismissed that lawsuit challenging this new independent contractor rule. As you pointed out, there are many lawsuits challenging this same rule. The one that is furthest along right now was also filed by another trucking company. So they asked for a motion for preliminary injunction while the litigation is ongoing. Federal court denied that motion. An appeal of that denial to that motion is ongoing right now. So that's where we're at. There's also been several lawsuits filed by freelance writers whose business model also, falls on independent contracting. So a couple of those one has been dismissed, another one's still pending. So there are at least 5 federal lawsuits challenging this rule. None have been successful. But here's the weird thing is this all may be a moot point because this 2024 rule rescinded Trump's 2021 rule. Well, who's coming in office in a couple of days? Donald Trump. The question is, will he reinstate his rule? And then we're just back to where we were before, January of 2024. Yes, a giant mess.
Never a dull moment. But we'll keep an eye on that one as well. I do want to make sure here, we don't have a whole lot of time, but January 21st, we've talked about this before, the broker transparency comments. That's the deadline for getting them in. Mark, we'll keep banging this drum. If you haven't made a comment, do it.
Yeah, there's about 2,300 comments in, and the bad part about that is they've really kind of slowed down here lately. It was over 2,000 well over a week ago, and just not as many coming in. Obviously, 21st, as you mentioned, is the deadline. Really a push these last few days. Get those in. Tell them, why broker transparency is so important to you as a truck driver, as a business, how it helps improve safety as well. And also let them know where maybe they fell short, or if there's some other things in the proposal that they didn't include that they should. You can do that really easily at regulations.gov or going to OOIDA's fightingfortruckers.com.
Yeah, that's the website to go to. The easiest way, I think, really is fightingfortruckers.com. As you mentioned it there, really a one-stop shop for kind of getting your word out there and making sure that your elected officials and everybody out there knows what a problem this is. Again, fightingfortruckers.com, landline.media. You can read Tyson and Mark's work on that website each and every day. And, of course, in every issue of Landline Magazine. Tyson, Mark, always good to see you. We'll talk to you again soon.
Hey, been a pleasure. Thanks.
We'll step aside for a brief moment, but hang tight. We're back in a jiff.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive, Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline now. Welcome back. Every week, we check in with Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. Unlike some of us, Marty is enjoying some milder weather in the American Southwest. But while he's there, he's hearing about some of the things that are bothering truckers. One of the big ones is the clean truck check that truckers have to go through in the state of California, and some headlights that some people find to be way too bright.
Carolina west to Denver, up to Bangor, west to Austin, coast to coast, sea to sea, sail on, sail on.
Well, Marty, how are you doing?
I am lovely, Mark, and you?
Very well, sir. Where are we finding you this fine day?
Well, just getting set up here at the TA in Barstow, California. We'll be here the weekend through the 19th, and that's at I-15, exit 178 Linwood Road. They have 303 parking spots, a Black Bear Diner, a Subway, and 15 showers, and an Amazon lockers, which I'm hoping to get my delivery in. Who knows, though?
Well, hopefully we'll be rooting for you on that. And, you know, I remember your predecessor, John, was very fond of the Black Bear Diner, and I've eaten at the one we have here, and I have to tell you, I'm a little fond of it myself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. It's a good place to go. And, yeah, it seems like they're adding some more of those into the TA Petros. And, speaking of restaurants and that, I just heard that the Johnson's Corner restaurant's closing down. And the other day I got a call from one of our life members, and they told me that our place there in Morris, Illinois, they closed that restaurant down. And now that one, they did say a Black Bear Diner's coming in, that one, but I'm not sure about Johnson's Corner there in Colorado.
Yeah, and it's worthy of note that, at least according to some of the coverage I read on that, they are still going to have the baked goods, including the cinnamon rolls, available in the store there at the truck stop, because I know everybody's going to be concerned about that if they hear that restaurant's shutting down. So
that's true. I'm glad that they're going to keep the baked goods, because that was one of the big draws there. And, they had the smaller cinnamon rolls and the really, really big one. And so, yeah, it definitely a draw for them.
Oh, well, let's talk a little bit about what's going on there. And I know that one of the things that's generated some conversation lately is the clean truck check in California. And I think that's something you've been through yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, we're actually going to go through it again. But yeah, we got tested, it was about a year ago. And with all the delays and that, we're due again. So we're going to get that done, and hopefully everything will go smooth. I'm sure it will. The biggest problem, from what I understand, is if a truck goes in there and if they have any malfunction indicator light on at all, doesn't matter if it has anything to do with the emissions or not, it'll still fail the emissions test. So if you're going to go in and get one, make sure that you don't have any lights on, and get that dealt with before you go in, because there's no use in spending the time and the money and then not pass it.
Absolutely. And that is a tough inspection from what I hear. So definitely something you want to be ready for when you get there.
Yeah, the newer trucks, they'll just hook up to your OBD, your ECM. Then that'll go through its checks, and then it'll actually send the results into Sacramento right away. And then the response will come back that you're either pass or you fail. And then if you pass, either way, they're going to give you a printout. But then, of course, you carry the printout with you. But, and then as the time goes on, like right now, I believe that since it's implementing right now, that it'll be once every 6 months instead of once every year. And then at some point in time, it goes to once every quarter, which I don't know. It's getting a little bit ridiculous if you ask me. Some of the things, hoops that you have to jump through, and not only the time, but the money that you're investing every time you go in to get that tested.
Yeah, it's not a small deal. It is not a small deal. So if you are going to run in California, and we know that fewer people are doing that maybe have in the past, be ready.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about another one out there, and this is one I've actually been reading some articles about, but you had brought it up as well. LED lights, so specifically the LED headlights. And you mentioned, and I've seen again in these articles, people complaining that the light is so bright it's blinding. And tell us a little bit of what you've heard from other truckers on this, Marty.
Yeah, we actually had a gentleman that is not a truck driver, but he follows us and very interested in trucking and that. And he came in and visited me, and we talked about, a lot of times it'll be the other way around. Cars blinding truck drivers with their bright lights on when they shouldn't be, and some of those really high power headlights. And caught a hold of an article the other day and about, is it legal? The LED's legal. And of course the LED lights are legal. We have them on this truck, but they were designed this way when they put them in. And the biggest problem when what I've read is when you take a replacement bulb that on a light that normally doesn't have an LED, but you are putting the upgrade into LED. And actually, I was looking at that possibility for our pickup, just because I know LEDs, they last longer and they're, brighter. And but then after reading this article, it's like, okay, I'm not sure if that's, legitimate, legal for me to go ahead and put that in the pickup or not, because they weren't designed that way. The whole housing and that wasn't designed that way. So what I would, suggest to people, especially truck drivers out there that are wanting to upgrade their headlights, really check into that and make sure that they all conform to the rules and regulations. You'd hate to get a ticket over something that you thought you were doing a better job of putting better bulbs in and then get yourself in trouble. But at least, check into that and see if you're putting the right things in for, what you're doing.
Yeah. And I do wonder if some of the people that are complaining about lights being too bright are either looking at those old halogen bulbs or if it's just someone that has their brights on.
Yeah, and you're right. It could be somebody that just has their brights on. Some of the time, you can adjust the height and that, and some of those can get kind of out of whack with our very smooth roads. I say with tongue in cheek out there now. And so are some of that, could that be causing some of the problems? Absolutely.
It's a wild, wild thing out there right now. Well, Marty, we're running a little short on time, but I did want to check in. Where are you headed to next after your current location?
We are going to be going over to the Speedway in Bakersfield, California for the 21st and 22nd. That's Highway 58, exit 117. Then after that, we'll be at the TA in Wheeler Ridge, the 24th through the 26th. And that's I-5 at Laval Road, and they have a Black Bear Diner as well, and a whole bunch of Burger King, Pizza Hut, Popeyes, Subway, and Taco Bell, 306 parking spots and 10 showers. So definitely a lot of choices at that particular location. So, not only good parking areas, but also a lot of choices for you when you come in to rest.
I guess all truck stops eventually get a Black Bear Diner. I don't know. It sure seems to be heading that way.
Well, it might be just that I'm hitting them that way. I'm not quite sure if that's on my fault or somebody else's.
Well, there you go. Well, Marty, we're out of time, but are there any final words you want to give people before you head off into the sunset?
Absolutely, Mark. Just ask the drivers, be kind to one another, and give that driver next to you a break.
Brothers of the highway, children of the wind.
Once again, that was Marty Ellis, who drives OOIDA's tour truck, the Spirit of the American Trucker. You can find Marty's next stop on our show and every day at our website, landlinenow.com. That includes truck stops, truck shows, and other special events across the country. Again, you can find that at landlinenow.com, and you can find the Spirit's complete schedule at ooida.com. That's our program for today. Thank you very much for joining us. We'll be back with more tomorrow. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit ooida.com.